G'day Trailblazers, my name is Cam, and for today's video, I'll be taking you through the Send Logs inside Salesforce Marketing Cloud, how you can use them and why you should use them to make sure you store your unique sending information about your emails, SMSs, and other activities. So to start with, what is Send Logging inside of Marketing Cloud? Well, Send Logging allows Marketing Cloud to store the information that was rendered and processed right before the send activity took place. That is, the information that was put together in your mail merge for your email or SMS as it goes to send. This is slightly different to the data views. Of course, you do have the Sent Data View in Marketing Cloud, which I can show you here, which relates down to what was actually sent. And most importantly, it gives you the information about that sent activity. This is different. That Sent Data View also captures information that took place after the send took place. So, for example, if it was sent successfully, it goes into the Sent Data View here. But there's also the Not Sent Data View for emails that were not sent because of a fault or an issue. What you do see though on the Data Send Logs is that these logging activities take place right before the send does. So it's information that's captured in Marketing Cloud as that rendering takes place of your email and your data. This is very useful because there are some things that of course you can capture on unique SMS or email send. You do this through the Send Log. So, how do we do this inside Marketing Cloud? Well, we can jump into our data extensions, of course in Email Studio. We can find ourselves, I've got a folder here called Send Logs. I've got a few send logs that I've created. Now you can create your own send logs very easily by jumping into the Create button in your data extensions, and you can create a new standard data extension and go OK. Now in this one, we're going to choose the creation method, not to create a brand new, but to use a template. When we choose template, we get this list of existing templates built into Marketing Cloud, and you'll find a few send logs. So of course, we're going to have our send log, is our email send log, our SMS send logs, and of course, we'll also have our subscription logs and our push send log as well. When you create these logs, and I'll choose the send log for email for now, it's going to give you a naming convention. It's very common for your send log to remove the other information and just call it your send log. Now, I already have a send log, so I'll call this one send log test. And of course, we leave the rest of it as is. We don't want this to be a sendable data extension or testable, so we leave it as it is. On the next screen, we're going to see our data retention. Now, for best practice, you usually do have a data retention put as a number of days or weeks where you capture that information. This can be useful because it means that you do want to retain the data for a specific amount of time so you can do things with it. For example, capture the new rows in your send log and extract them into your data lake or data warehouse. What's not recommended is to leave the retention settings as off, which means your data stays here forever. If you do that, of course, you may end up with millions or possibly billions of rows in your send log, capturing all that data and just leaving it there in Marketing Cloud, which is not best practice. So again, a retention setting of some sort based on how you operate in your business. So for the individual records that are added to this data extension, we want this to be a retention log for maybe a few weeks, and that's it. And we'll go next. Now, of course, because this is a default template of Marketing Cloud, we do have some required fields that get added, but we can also add some custom fields in too. Now, this is really handy. So when it comes to your send log, this is where you capture all information processed at time of send as the send event takes place, which means inside Marketing Cloud, dynamic content, such as AMP script values, can also be captured here too. Now, one thing to be aware of, this is not a place to dump all the information about every send that takes place. You of course already have access to your data views, which have all that information. So for example, you wouldn't want to capture things like your subject line or your email name, because those things are already captured inside of the job data view. Also, it means if you have an email send going to, let's say, 1 million subscribers, you wouldn't want this send log to have the email name printed 1 million times. And of course, the subject line printed 1 million times as well. That would be a silly use of data. So again, try to use the existing data views so you do have that email name and subject line, for example. However, if you're doing things like dynamic content, dynamic subject lines, you may want to capture the subject line at time of send because it may have some personalization in it. More than just the hi first name, it may be different based on your demographic, geographic, or other information that you're using to personalize on. So again, make sure you check with your architect or someone who knows the structure of this data to make sure you're only capturing things that you need. Don't just capture data for the sake of data. Now again, we do have access to capture personalization strings. So jumping into our documentation for personalization strings, we have access to all these really cool strings we can capture. And there's lots of them here. I'll put this link in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. One of the coolest ones though is going to be things like your email address, of course your subscriber key, and best of all, the most common one that I see when it comes to this activity is the view email URL. And there's reasons for this, and I'll show you why. If we look at our send log, when it's created by default, there's a couple of things that are missing. You may notice we have a job ID, list ID, batch ID, subscriber ID, the triggered send ID, and the error code. Now, the error code is going to be any codes that error at time of the render of this email. The triggered send relates to the triggered send ID, which I believe relates to the journey trigger as well. The subscriber ID is not subscriber key, it's the numeric ID for the subscriber. Now that, of course, we can see in my data view here. We go over into our all subscribers table. Here it is here. Subscriber ID is actually the primary key in the back end. The subscriber key is what you see in the front end. The ID is in the back end. Now that can be helpful, but it's also not going to help you to do some joins in SQL. So a few things you might commonly add to this send log is going to be things to help you match up that data later. We've already got job ID and list ID, which again relate directly to our existing data views. There's our job ID, we've got our list ID, batch ID, so we already have the information here to do a few lookups, and subscriber ID is there as well, which can help us, but maybe you want to capture that subscriber key in this data log as well. So what you can do, you can jump into your personalization strings and you'll find that subscriber key is a value we can keep. So we can copy our subscriber key and make that one of our values to put inside of our data extension. Now, as you can see, we can't do things with an underscore as the first character. So unfortunately, we can't do subscriber key exactly as shown. It has to be a different value. Now, luckily for us, subscriber key without the underscore also works. But one thing I do like to try and do is just make our formatting consistent with an uppercase S and uppercase K. These things don't matter because these are going to be case insensitive, but it just makes it look nicer as well. For a subscriber key, I like to make sure it's a little bit longer, just to make sure it captures those email addresses or anything long that we might have for subscriber key. And of course, making sure it's nullable just in case. One more thing you might notice is not here in these default fields is the send date, the date that send took place. So of course, we're going to have this send log, but there's no send date. It doesn't help us very much for doing some auditing or reporting, so we can put in a send date as well. We do this by saying send date, and the cool thing here is we can use our data type of date, and we can make it a nullable, and click this little minus sign here, which puts in the current date. So the exact second that this row is inserted into this data extension is going to print the current date in server time, which I believe is in the CST or the GMT -6 time zone, which means that now we're going to have a send date here as well. Now there is one more field I like to add, and for that I'm going to go back into my actual data log, my actual send log, because this one here is going to make a duplicate, and I don't want to make a duplicate as I already have one here. If you go into my send log, I can see I've already got 52 sends in my business unit so far over the last few years, so that's not many sends. But I've got a couple of fields here. So I've got subscriber key working, as you can see. I've got email address, there it is, but I don't have that send date. I also don't have the other cool field to store. So let's go edit fields. Let's do a couple of things. We'll add that send date in to start with. That's going to help us out. Send date, we'll make it a date time, nullable, and we'll make sure that we use, send date, text, nullable, and use the current date, just like that. And we're going to also add the view as web page link as well. Now this one here, if we go into our personalization string, we're going to find down here, where is it? It is our view email URL. Now, one thing to be aware of, when it comes to your send log, you have to make sure that the field names match the variables in AMP script that are used in your email. This is very important. You have to make sure it's the same naming convention because any variables that you have stored in AMP script will then be looked up in your send log to add those values in. If you want to rename something, you can do that by storing the value as a different AMP script value, but to make things easy, it's easy to just rename it as exactly this. So our view email URL. So I'm going to copy that value, go back into our data extension and call it exactly that. Now, of course, the URL can be a very, very long string. So I'm actually going to delete the length of our text here and leave it blank. That means there is no length specified. It's going to be whatever length is that comes through. And of course, nullable just in case there is no view link. Now with that done, I can save my fields. So I'm going to go ahead now and update my data extension. And hopefully we're going to have 2 new values to have a look at. There we go. Now if I have a look inside my records, I can see all my previous sends to date. If I scroll all the way to the right, I'm going to see I've got my 2 new values here. And of course, nothing is in them. I just made those 2 new columns in my send log. So let's now try and populate these 2 new values in these 2 new columns by doing a test send. So I'm going to jump into Content Builder. Let's create ourselves a brand new email message. I'm going to choose from my existing templates. I'll use an empty blank one for this one. Call this one my send log test to make sure all my things are working. And we'll go next. Now for this email, we're going to do nothing fancy at all. We're just going to put in a little HTML block. And for good measure, let's connect a data source. I'm going to send to just myself for this email. So my data extensions, I'm just going to go to myself. Okay. And let's say hi and first name sub key was equal to our subscriber key. And that's it. So now we should be able to send this just to our first name and subscriber key. And we'll go done. This, of course, will be our send log test. And now it's in this email. So we'll save it. And we'll do a production send for this email. So here's my send log test. Let's go and send this activity. Whoops, there it is there. Actions. What's in Content Builder? Let's go to Email Studio. Here we are. Jump into our content. Let's do a send this way. So of course we'll send this one as a production send to my one record in my one data extension. Which again, I know my data. So I'm not going to be sending this to any production recipients. It's not going to go to any customers. It's just going to go to my personal email address. So once my content loads up, let's go in and send this email. Okay, so here is our content now. I've got my send log, and now I can go and do my send activity. So let's do our quick send to information as it is, looking good. Go next. Which one contains the following? Yes, I know, that's why I put it there. For our data extensions, we just want to send to my record, looking good. Next, send it right now. Let's track all our things, of course, and we'll go, yep, looking good. We'll go next. Information's correct, happy with this. So let's go, this information is ready to send, and we'll do send and good to go. And just like that, our email's been sent. Now we did have 52 records in our data extension just a moment ago. So let's go back now into our send logs and have a look at what that count is shortly. It's still 52, but as the email now gets rendered up to send, we should see that email go up from 52 up to 53. So we can refresh the data extension folder here by clicking on the data extension folder name on the left. You can refresh that folder. Still 52. So what I can do is I can actually go back a level into my overview and see what my pending sends are. No pending sends. Okay, so we actually do have a recent send activity. So back into our send log. Let's check again. Still 52 records. All right, so it might take a second longer and we should see that record come through. Okay, so I just felt my phone go off and we can see there that my send log just delivered successfully. There we are. And we should be able to go back now into our data extensions and click that refresh and 53 records. Perfect. We now jump back into our send log. Let's have a look. 53, go to our records. Let's go all the way to the side and then all the way to the bottom. Let's see our new values. And here we go. So we do have our send that took place with our job ID of our send. Of course, our subscriber key, email address, and the send date that took place. Perfect. And we also have our click to view email link. Now what's great here is that we can actually copy this value and make sure it works. So if I was to copy this value, go up into my browser, we should be able to straight away see our email view, and there it is. That's our email. So we've now got that view as a web page link, which we can now take and store anywhere. A key thing to be aware of here is that by doing this, technically we are triggering a view activity on this email. So we have access to the email viewing on a web page. So the viewing or the opening pixel is going to be triggered. However, when it comes to things like seeing what a subscriber was sent for auditing, or if they've called up the call center, this is a really useful way to have that data on hand so you can clearly go back and see what they were sent. Now, there's one small thing to be mindful of, and that is in my example, I used the field name of subscriber key, and also my sending data extension also had a field called subscriber key as the primary key. And not every sending data extension is going to have the sending data extension field of subscriber key set. So for example, go back into my email that I built originally, I've got my subscriber key here as it was in the original one. If I go into this content now, and I change from my CAMDE to a new data source, for example, if I load up a one which only has contact ID and go OK, now we've got some different fields, a contact ID, not a subscriber key. What happens here is when I go into my send, it's obviously going to error because there is no value of subscriber key in this email. Now, of course, I can send the email still. You don't have to have subscriber key to send the email, but because there was no personalization field of subscriber key, that means that my send log, which now has 54 records, has a send which does not have a subscriber key. Again, because that email did not have a value of subscriber key in it. But we can solve this. We go back into our email, back into our content. We can make a little bit of our AMP script content, which can make a subscriber key value. So we can quickly make a little AMP script content block here. And we can use the set at subscriber key to set a value for subscriber key. Now the function we can use here is to use our attribute value. Now in our personalization strings, we do have a subscriber key string that is the underscore subscriber key. So as you already saw though, we can't make a field called underscore subscriber key. So you have to convert the underscore subscriber key into just subscriber key. And do that with the attribute value function. So in the attribute value, we can pick up the subscriber key value just like that, setting it as subscriber key. And now that we have subscriber key, of course, we could change our function here to use the subscriber key value that we've now captured. So at subscriber key, same as it is here. If we now go next and try and re-render our content, we should now see a success message because we do in fact have subscriber key coming through. And we can check this by going back into our content. And one small thing to check there, we are printing it, oops, equals sign, there we are. Now let's try it, and there it is. There is our subscriber key as our contact key. So now, if we save our email, we can go back into our email send and pick up our send log, and let's do a send on this email with our brand new AMP script function in control here to set that subscriber key AMP script value. Now note that I did know that I have the underscore subscriber key attribute that I can use. For all your emails, that should be a very safe parameter to use. So again, with that single line of AMP script, you should be able to pick up the underscore subscriber key, storing it as the subscriber key value. I'll go ahead now and I'll send this email and we can check it out in the send log afterwards. And with our send complete, we now have 55 records in our send log data extension. When we drill down into it, we can see we now have the subscriber key value coming in from that latest send. Now, the great news is, of course, we did this for the subscriber key field. We do this for any other field too. So if you do want to have your own custom fields that you want to collect, for example, the source of the send data extension, the subscriber's details, perhaps their business rep, or other information that you may want to capture on a very send by send specific level, you can create those custom fields in the send log. Just be mindful that if there is no correlating personalization string or AMP script attribute or variable that's been set when the email gets sent, then it will result in a null value coming through in your send log when it tries to add that row in. Now, I've talked about that send log for emails, and the same thing exists for the send log when it comes to your SMS subscriptions and push. Once again, in your templates, you can see, for example, the SMS Send, SMS Send Log. We can open up those send logs and have a look for ourselves to see the values that come through. Now the neat thing is, the same thing that works for email also works for your SMS sends as well. So if you are doing a send, you can also use your personalization strings inside of Mobile Connect to work here as well. You may notice that once again, there is no date field in this one. There's also no subscriber key. There's also no mobile phone number. That can make things a bit tricky. So you can use your personalization strings, once again, back onto the personalization strings documentation, and you can use the values that are here. The thing to be aware of though is that you often don't have a subscriber key value for your SMS sends unless you are sending to a data extension which does have that value. Additionally, the mobile phone number is going to be the mobile phone number as stored in the personalization field, and that's what it looks like there. So if you use that value of mobile number or short code, again, for your SMS interactions, those will populate inside of your send log. Finally, of course, you have access to that send date, which you can create using the custom value, and to make sure it uploads the send date at the time that row was added. And there's one more thing to be aware of. If you jump into the mobile-specific AMP functions, you also have things like the message, the verb, the nouns, and other content that was sent in that SMS. Now, you don't often have to capture this content, but if you do want to, it's similar to things like your subject line. Only capture it if you're very sure there's going to be very unique content inside of your SMS that you want to store as a log of what was sent. Otherwise, of course, you will have that content stored inside of your Mobile Connect data views. We scroll across here, we have things like the SMS message sent, which does contain the sent information. I believe the message is captured in here somewhere as well. And so you will have message text, there you go. And so you do actually already have this captured inside of your SMS message tracking in your data views. One thing to be aware of, if your SMS send log is not populating, then you may not have your SMS send logging enabled in your business rules on your business unit. If that's the case, then contact support and ask them to make sure that your SMS send logging has been enabled, and that way they should populate when your SMS sends take place. And that's all for this quick intro into the send logs inside of Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Hope you found this information useful, and if you have, then please let me know in the comments below with a big thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when I release more Salesforce Marketing Cloud content.